Okay, so I'm gonna just bust into the commentary a little bit on the Bahir. So if we go to the first Siman, the opening of this book, it says Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah said. So number one, we need to know who Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah was. So he was a very mystical man, but he was also said that he was a very kind person. If we go to Perkei Avot 3:5, it says, Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah said, whoever takes upon himself the yoke of the Torah, they remove from him the yoke of government and the yoke of worldly concerns. And whoever breaks off from himself the yoke of the Torah, they place upon him the yoke of government and the yoke of worldly concerns. But if we look at that in Hebrew, we see a little bit more is going on than just that statement. It says, Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah Omer, Kol HaMkabel Alav Ol Torah. So that word Hamkabel, the shoresh, the root of that word, is basically Kabbalah, to receive, right? So this is a mystical text, and you see that his primary statement in Jewish literature is this statement about receiving, and it's specifically receiving the yoke of Torah. So that's something that you could probably dig into that for quite a while, because even if we use that word, the yoke of Torah, there's a lot there to unpack too. But anyway, continuing on, it says that basically that it's removed from him the yoke of government, and the word there used for government is malchut. And we know that Malchut is considered to be a very low sphera on the Kabbalistic collection of sphirot. But also, the word, derech eretz is what they have for the yoke of worldly concerns. So there's some interesting things that are going on with that statement. I'll leave it at that. But the other thing that's also interesting to note is that Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah is noted as being the one who composed the Ana B'Koach prayer. So in the Siddur, right in the section right after, this is the Nusach Sephard. So right after we talk about Abaye listed the order of the altar service. And there's an interesting thing with that statement just alone. But after he details the order of the service of the altar, we have the Ana B'Koach prayer. So I'll read this in Hebrew. It's specifically 72 Hebrew words. I don't think this translation does it justice, but it says in Hebrew, and this is Art Scroll, we beg you, with the strength of your right hand's greatness, untie the bundled sins, accept the prayer of your nation, strengthen us, purify us, O awesome one. Please, O strong one, those who foster your oneness, guard them like the pupil of an eye. Bless them, purify them, show them pity. May your righteousness always recompense them. Powerful Holy One, with your abundant goodness, guide your congregation. One and only exalted one, turn to your nation, which proclaims your holiness. Accept our entreaty and hear our cry, O knower of mysteries. And then, the final statement that's not a part of this prayer is Baruch Shem Kavod Machuto Le'olam Ve'ed, which, if you're familiar with that, with the whole, it is blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. And the idea is that the Ana B'Koach prayer is, in essence, dealing with the 42-letter name of God. You can study that on your own, but that's the text. That's the prayer that he taught. So getting into this, the opening for the Bahir, it says one verse, Job 37:21 states, "Now they do not see light; it is brilliant, Bahir, in the skies, around about God in terrible majesty." So that's Job 37:21, and we really need to take a look at the entire chapter of Job 37 to see what's going on there, because there's some things before and after that are interesting. And continuing with Siman 1, it says, another verse, however, Psalm 18:12 states, he made darkness his hiding place. It is also written in Psalm 97 verse 2, cloud and gloom surround him. This is an apparent contradiction. A third verse comes and reconciles the two. It is written in Psalm 139 verse 12, even darkness is not dark to you. Night shines like day. Light and darkness are the same. So the one thing that Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah, he did a lot of exposition on on the Torah based on Klal Uprat. So it was a type of Torah exegesis that was basically of the 13 principles that were laid down by Rabbi Yishmael, but that was his type of, what do they call it, hermeneutics. But I'm going to go to the back of this particular book here, and we're going to take a look at R.A. Kaplan's commentary. Hold on a second. Okay. He says, this paragraph has already been discussed in the introduction in the section on Tzimtzum. It speaks of a basic dichotomy where God must be both immanent and transcendental. He must fill all creation, yet at the same time must be utterly divorced from it. So the idea is, we think of, I'll continue with this, but if we think of how God creates, it's not so easy to understand this, but we can just try just on a basic level here. So if God is everything, like before he creates or anything, he's everything. The only existence is God. So for God to create something, he has to, in some aspect, some way, withdraw himself so that he has, let's say, a vessel of some type of void that he creates inside of. And that void is the level that he withdraws himself. Some of the early Jewish mystics consider that like the different sephirot, where there's higher and lower ones, but a long time ago they had these concentric circles, right? So there's God fills all space, but for him to create something, he has to withdraw himself from it in some way for him to create inside of. So it's almost like a vessel where he's created inside of, and that's where we get these shattering of the vessels and things like that. But there is an aspect of this that is completely related to physics, and this is something from over 100 years ago. They talked about this, but they don't talk about this anymore. So guys like Steinmetz and Tesla and some others, they saw that the universe was full of a medium of which electromagnetic waves flow through. And we're talking here in this book about light, and mysticism is all dealt with this idea of light, right? And if we look at light in the terms of physics, it's an electromagnetic wave, right? So every wave, for a wave to move through something, it has to have a medium. And the denser the medium is, the faster the wave can travel. So we think of space like out there in outer space. They say that it's a vacuum where there's nothing there. But in reality, the electromagnetic medium that it flows through is actually extremely dense. That's why the speed of light is so fast, right? Whereas, so if you think of it in that term, right? So something that is like in our world right now, light can't pass through this. X-rays can, but like if this was steel, X-rays couldn't pass through this. Light couldn't pass through it. So that would mean that the object that you have is less dense of the electromagnetic medium. So in essence, we, or physical objects, are a bubble in the electromagnetic universe, electromagnetic medium. And that goes along with the idea that God had to withdraw himself, so think of a bubble, for him to create inside of. So if we are physical objects, like electromagnetic waves do not flow. The denser we are in our, so we think in our world, it's kind of like upside down, right? So we think, let's say we had a block of lead, it might take some high intensity X-rays to be able to penetrate just a little bit into it, but that lead's just going to absorb it all. It's like extremely dense, right? According to our view, our perspective of the world. But the reason why electromagnetism doesn't go through it is because that dense object is actually low density electromagnetic medium. I don't know. I don't know if you're picking up on this or not, but it's just a concept that some of the greatest physicists of the last century, those are their words, not mine. I'm not them, but it is actually very in line with Jewish mysticism. So, continuing here, light discussed here refers to the divine essence as perceived in the mystical state. Due to the constriction, tzimtzum, we do not see this light when we look toward God, and he therefore seems to be surrounded with darkness. So creation must exist as an independent entity and therefore cannot be totally infused with the divine presence. At the same time, however, it cannot be said that this essence does not infuse all creation, since there is no place empty of him, right? So even though God created us, we are not empty of God. God still exists in some form in like an inanimate object or in us. There's some sort of essence of him that's still inside of that. Therefore, when we look toward God, this light must actually be there. This is the dichotomy. Rabbi Nehunia resolves this by explaining that the constriction only exists with regard to creation, but not with respect to the Creator. Although we see him surrounded by darkness, he sees himself surrounded by light, since for him, even this darkness is actually light. In this discussion, the author makes use of the dialectic involving thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The same concept is alluded to in the last of the 13 principles of exegesis of Rabbi Ishmael. So I mentioned that earlier, 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, who was a disciple of Rabbi Nehunia. So two verses that oppose one another until a third verse is brought to reconcile them. And that's exactly what we saw in the first Siman of the Bahir. This is the introduction to Sifra, right? So it is this dialectic that results in the basic triplet structure so often found in Kabbalah. See Sefer Yetzirah 3:1 and below in 127. So, besides a philosophical teaching, however, Rabbi Nehunia was also providing an important lesson for initiates into the mysteries. The vision may be one of clouds and gloom, but for God, even this darkness is light. And I find it extremely hilarious that I have this book on Hebrew that the author, so ignorant, he says that there's no connection between Hebrew and English, that like Hebrew had no influence on English, but yet the word for a cloud is essentially the same word as we have the word anonymous. So anon is like the word for like cloud in Hebrew. So like something that's concealed, it's anonymous. But Hebrew and English have no connection, right? I'll do some videos someday about Hebrew words. Okay, so this is alluded to by the word shachakim for skies. The Hebrew word for skies in the verse from Job 37:21, as well as Psalm 18:12. This word shachakim always alludes to the Sefirot Netzach and Hod, the Sefirot involved in prophecy and the mystical vision. So one verse says that there is brilliance in this vision. It is brilliant in the skies, shachakim. While the other verse says thick clouds of the shachakim, thick clouds of the sky, Psalm 18 verse 12. So this is just on the first Siman here. Now, if we look closer at Job 37. So I'm just going to read this. The verse that he quotes, 21, is actually towards the end, but we'll get to it. Because of this too, my heart quakes and leaps. Because of this too, my heart quakes and leaps from its space. Just listen to the noise of his rumbling, to the sound that comes out of his mouth. He lets it loose beneath the entire heavens, his lightning to the ends of the earth. Oh, and this is the JPS. I'm sorry. After it, he lets out a roar. He thunders in his majestic voice. No one can find a trace of it by the time his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He works wonders that we cannot understand. He commands the snow fall to the ground, and the downpour of rain, his mighty downpour of rain. is as a sign on every man's hand, that all men may know his doings. Then the beast enters its lair and remains in its den. The storm wind comes from its chamber, and the cold from the constellations. By the breath of God ice formed, and the expanse of water becomes still. He also loads the clouds with moisture. He scatters his lightning clouds. He keeps turning events by his stratagems, that they might accomplish all that he commands them throughout the inhabited earth, causing each of them to happen to his land, whether as a scourge or as a blessing. Give ear to this, Job. And that's actually, if you remember, that was one of the words that's used in the Bahir. It talks about the ear with regard to the letter Aleph. Remember? Give ear to this, Job. So, Ha'azina, right? Zot Yov. Stop to consider the marvels of God. Do you know what charge God lays upon them when his lightning cloud shines? When his lightning clouds shine? Do you know the marvels worked upon the expanse of clouds? By him whose understanding is perfect, why your clothes become hot, when the land is becalmed by the south wind. And remember, we were talking before about these directions, right? Can you help him stretch out the heavens, firm as a mirror of cast metal? Inform us then what we may say to him. We cannot argue because we are in darkness. Is anything conveyed to him when I speak? Can a man say anything when he is confused? Now then, one cannot see the sun, though it be brilliant in the heavens. And that's the verse that this book is based off of right there. Like, though it be bright or brilliant in the heavens, until the wind comes and clears them of clouds. By the north wind, the golden rays emerge. And remember that word zahav. He talked about that significantly in this book as well. The splendor about God is awesome. And again, that's hod. The word there is hod. So, and then it says Shaddai, we cannot attain to him. So I'll read this in Hebrew. Shaddai lo mitzanuhu. Mitzanuhu, I'm sorry. So there again is the word that's used. We investigated that name of God in here as well. So he is great in power and justice, in abundant in righteousness. He does not torment. Therefore men are in awe of him, whom none of the wise can perceive. So I encourage you to go through and actually look at the Hebrew for this, because there's a lot of things that came up that are actually in this entire work. And it's just there's a lot of interesting interplay here. So I'm going to go back and we're going to read Psalm 18. Well, what is that? Psalm 18:12. That was the one. This way. So I'm going to read the entire psalm, but so we're going to, the verse that he points out is, he made darkness his hiding place. So for the leader of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord after the Lord had saved him from the hands of all his enemies and from the clutches of Shaul. And I think, yeah, I'll leave that for a book here. He said, I adore you, O Lord, my strength. O Lord, my crag, my fortress, my rescuer, my God, my rock in whom I seek refuge, my shield, my mighty companion, my haven. All praise I called on the Lord, and was delivered from my enemies. Ropes of death encompassed me, torrents of Belial terrified me, ropes of Sheol encircled me, snares of death comforted me. In my distress I called on the Lord, cried out to my God. In his temple he heard my voice. My cry to him reached his ears. Think of the Anabakoach prayer that I read to you just earlier, where he was talking about all these cries, right? And I think some of those words shouldn't even be considered, like the way it's translated, it's more like screams, right? So in my distress I called on the Lord, cried out to my God. In his temple he heard my voice. My cry to him reached his ears. There's that again, ears. Just like the letter Aleph, right? And then the earth rocked and quaked. The foundations of the mountains shook. rocked by his indignation. Smoke went up from his nostrils. From his mouth came devouring fire. Live coals blazed forth from him. He bent the sky and came down. A thick cloud beneath his feet. He mounted a cherub and flew, gliding on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his screen, dark thunderheads, dense clouds of the sky were his pavilion round about him. So that's that verse 18:12. So out of the brilliance before him, hail and fiery coals pierced the clouds. Then the Lord thundered from heaven. The Most High gave forth his voice, hail and fiery coals. He let fly his shafts and scattered them. He discharged lightning and routed them. The ocean bed was exposed. Foundations of the world were laid bare by your mighty roaring, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. So I don't know if you remember what the connotations were of like the ocean, the waters. So if you remember that, maybe if you go through the series again, it's worth going through those videos again and hearing that stuff maybe multiple times. But I'll continue. He reached down from on high. He took me. He drew me out of the mighty waters. He saved me from my fierce enemy, from foes too strong for me. They comforted me on the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out to freedom. He rescued me because he was pleased with me. The Lord rewarded me according to my merit. He requited the cleanliness of my hands. For I have kept to the ways of the Lord, and have not been guilty before my God. For I am mindful of all his rules. I have not disregarded his laws. I have been blameless toward him, and have guarded myself against sinning. And the Lord has requited me according to my merit, the cleanness of my hands in his sight. With the loyal you deal loyally, with the blameless man blamelessly, with the pure you act purely, with the perverse you are wily. It is you who deliver lowly folk, but haughty eyes you humble. It is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lights up my darkness. With you I can rush a barrier. With my God I can scale a wall. The way of God is perfect. The way of the Lord is pure. He is a shield to all who seek refuge in him. So again, it kind of reminds me quite a bit about his statement in Pirkei Avot, taking upon the yoke of Torah. So he is a shield to all who seek refuge. And truly, who is a God except the Lord? Who is a rock but our God? And the God who girded me with might, who made my way perfect, who made my legs like a deer's, and let me stand firm on the heights, who trained my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your protection. Your right hand has sustained me. Your care has made me great. You have let me stride on freely. My feet have not slipped. I pursued my enemies and overtook them. I did not turn back till I destroyed them. I struck them down, and they could rise no more. They lay fallen at my feet. You have girded me with strength for battle, brought my adversaries low before me. I made my enemies turn tail before me. I wiped out my foes. They cried out, but there was none to deliver. Cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I ground them fine as windswept dust. I trod them flat as dirt of the streets. You have rescued me from the strife of people. You have set me at the head of nations. Peoples I knew not must serve me. At the mere report of me they are submissive. Foreign peoples cower before me. Foreign peoples lose courage and come trembling out of their strongholds. The Lord lives. Blessed is my rock. Exalted be God, my deliverer, the God who has vindicated me and made people subject to me, who rescued me from my enemies and raised me clear of my adversaries, saved me from lawless men. For this I sing your praise among the nations, Lord, and hymn your name. He accords great victories to his king. Remember, it was talking about victories of victories. He accords great victories to his king. Keep faith with his anointed, with David and his offspring forever. And it also, the theme of also like seed also came up in the book as well, and that's connected to all of this. So again, all these themes come out of these chapters, these passages. So the next one is, it says it is also written, Psalm 97 verse 2, cloud and gloom surround him. This is an apparent contradiction, right? So Psalm 97. The Lord is king. Let the earth exult, and many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around him. Righteousness and justice are the base of his throne. Fires his vanguard, burning his foes on every side. His lightnings light up the world. The earth is convulsed at the sight. Mountains melt like wax at the Lord's presence, at the presence of the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all the people see his glory. All who worship images, who vaunt their idols, are dismayed. All divine beings bow down to him. And actually that came up also in this entire book. About he was talking about the angels. So Zion, hearing it, rejoices. The towns of Judah exult because of your judgments, O Lord. For you, Lord, are supreme over all the earth. You are exalted high above all divine beings. Excuse me. O you who love the Lord, hate evil. He guards the lives of his loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in the Lord and acclaim his holy name. Next one, 139 verse 12. It says, the third verse comes and reconciles the two. It is written, Psalm 139 verse 12, even darkness is not dark to you. Night shines like day. Light and darkness are the same. So I'm going to 139. Oops. Okay. For the leader of David, a psalm. O Lord, you have examined me and know me. When I sit down or stand up, you know it. You discern my thoughts from afar. You observe my walking and reclining, and are familiar with all my ways. There is not a word on my tongue, but that you, O Lord, know it well. You hedge me before and behind. You lay your hand upon me. It is beyond my knowledge. It is a mystery. I cannot fathom it. Where can I escape from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I descend to Sheol, you are there too. If I take wing with the dawn to come to rest on the western horizon, even there your hand will be guiding me. Your right hand will be holding me fast. If I say, surely darkness will conceal me, night will provide me with cover. Darkness is not dark for you. Light is as light as day. Darkness and light are the same. It was you who created my conscience. You fashioned me in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am wholesome and wondrously made. Your work is wonderful, I know it well. My frame was not concealed from you, when I was shaped in a hidden place, knit together in the recesses of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed limbs. They were all recorded in your book. In due time they were formed, to the very last one of them. How weighty your thoughts seem to me, O God, how great their number. I count them. They exceed the grains of sand. I end, but am still with you. O God, if you would only slay the wicked, you murderers, away from me, who invoke you for intrigue, your enemies who swear by you falsely. O Lord, you know I hate those who hate you and loathe your adversaries. I feel a perfect hatred toward them. I count them my enemies. Examine me, O God, and know my mind. Probe me and know my thoughts. See if I have vexatious ways, and guide me in ways everlasting. So, I think all of those chapters can be gone through pretty substantially, but that's the basis for how this book is formed. And again, I think that if you're going to take some time, I think if you went over, Job 37, that's probably the most critical chapter. And there's a lot there, and just keep in mind the way that the way that different passages are expounded by the rabbis, by the sages, and how things are, I'll just put it this way, gematria and interchange of letters, rearranging of letters. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there. I think that's all I'll say for now, but yeah, so just with that first Siman, there's a lot going on. I might as well continue. We have the next Siman, Rabbi Barachia said, "It is written in Genesis 1:2, the earth was chaos, tohu, and desolation, bohu." What is the meaning of was? This indicates that chaos existed previously and already was. What is chaos? Tohu. Something that confounds. Taha, people. Confounds people. What is desolation? Bohu. It is something that has substance. This is the reason that it's called bohu. That is, bohu, it is in it. Okay, so it says, although tohu and bohu usually have the simple connotation of chaos and desolation, they are here described as the basic ingredients of creation. God gives existence to all things and is therefore the ultimate giver. Creation, on the other hand, must receive its very existence from God and is therefore the ultimate receiver. And just again, that word receive is Kabbalah, right? It's the root of that word Kabbalah, is, everything you're going to have for like receive or receiver. Another important principle is the fact that God is an absolute simple unity and cannot be described in any qualities whatsoever. Every aspect that is necessary for creation must therefore also be created. As we see, two of the most basic of these are the concepts of giving and receiving. In Kabbalistic terminology, the concept of giving is referred to as light, while that of receiving is called a vessel. Both tohu, chaos, and bohu, desolation, allude to these primeval vessels. Tohu refers to the first vessels, which were shattered, while bohu refers to these vessels after they were restored and rectified. So the original vessels consisted of the 10 sephirot in their most primitive form. In this state, they could not interact with each other and hence could not give anything to each other. All they could do was receive from God. In order to receive God's light, however, a vessel must be in some way be connected to God. The basic difference between the spiritual and the physical is the fact that space does not exist in the spiritual, and hence there is no way in which the sephirot can be physically connected to God. The only possible relationship is therefore resemblance. Hence, in order to receive God's light, the vessel must, at least to some degree, resemble God. This presents a difficulty, however. If God is the ultimate giver, while the vessel only receives, the two are then absolute opposites. Therefore, in order for a vessel to properly receive, it must also give. What is therefore needed is a vessel that gives as well as receives. So think of that, a vessel that gives as well as receives. So the ultimate such vessel is man. If man is to receive God's light, he must first resemble God by being a giver. This he does by keeping God's commandments and thereby providing spiritual sustenance to the supernal worlds. Before he can do this, however, he must also resemble God by having both free will and free choice, and this is only possible when both evil and good exist. Also think of breath. It's always going in and out, right? We take in one form of air and we breathe out another form of air that other life forms in creation are able to adapt and utilize. And that's ultimately the ruach, right? The first stage of creation is called the universe of chaos or tohu. It is the state where the vessels, which were the primitive 10 sephirot, could receive God's light but could neither give nor interact. Insofar as they did not resemble God, these vessels were incomplete and therefore could not hold the light. Since they could not fulfill their purpose, they were overwhelmed by the light and shattered, this being the concept of the breaking of the vessels. I think this is actually a very interesting concept because if you know anything about primitive pottery, so whenever you make pottery, you need a certain type of material to go with it. It's not just like you just grab clay and you put it together. Some of the best ways to make pottery is to actually have something like either crushed shell or if you have already fired pottery that's shattered and you take those pieces and you put it into the new pottery. So that's supposed to actually be, I've read that that's supposed to be better for the pottery. So it's kind of like the idea that these vessels, they shattered, they were all collected back up and built back into, creation, right? So it becomes a part of creation again. So it is for this reason that these vessels are called tohu, which comes from a root meaning confounded. When a person is confounded, and the other thing about that is just think of kashrut. So if you have a vessel that's an earthenware vessel, if something happens to that vessel where it's not kosher anymore, if it's pasul, then it has to be shattered. Whereas metal can be passed through fire, right? But something like that type of vessel that's made from the earth, it has to be shattered. Okay, it is for this reason that these vessels are called tohu, which comes from the root meaning confounded. When a person is confounded, it means that he is perceiving an idea that his mind cannot hold. Similarly, the vessels of tohu, or chaos, received a light that they could not hold. Just like confusion and confoundment shatter the thought process, so these vessels were shattered. The broken pieces of these vessels fell to a lower spiritual level and subsequently became the source of all evil. It is therefore said that tohu, chaos, is the source of evil. The reason why the vessels were originally created without the ability to hold the light was so that evil could come into being, thus giving man the freedom of choice, which, as we have seen, was necessary for the rectification of the vessels. Furthermore, since evil originated in the highest original vessels, it can be rectified and re-elevated to this level. This breaking of the vessels is alluded to in the Midrash, which states that God created universes and destroyed them. Bereshit Rabbah 3:7. It is also alluded to in the Torah in the account of the kings of Edom at the end of Genesis 36. It says the death of each of these kings is said to infer the shattering of a particular vessel and its fall to a lower level, such a fall being referred to as death, for the reason why they called kings. See 49. So the word tohu is spelled tav-hu, tav being the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, since malchut, kingship, is the last of the sephirot. And remember, I was talking to you about Rabbi Nehunia ben HaKanah's statement in Pirkei Avot, where he talks about the yoke of malchut, right? It is represented with the letter tav. Since malchut, kingship, is the last of the sephirot, it is represented by the letter tav. So tohu, tav-hu, therefore refers to the realm of these kings. So after having been shattered, the vessels were re-rectified and rebuilt into personifications, or partzufim, enumerated in 62. So if you see Siman 62, each of these personifications consists of 613 parts, paralleling the 613 parts of the body, as well as the 613 commandments of the Torah. These personifications, or partzufim, were then able to interact with each other. More important, through the Torah, they were able to interact with man and therefore became givers as well as receivers. In the rectified state, the vessels were adequate to receive God's light. In Kabbalistic terminology, this state is called the universe of rectification, or tikkun. As here, it is also called bohu, desolation. Since the vessels of bohu can interact, there is said to be peace between them. Bohu is therefore seen as the source of peace. So bohu is translated as desolation, or more precisely, emptiness. This represents the emptiness of a vessel ready to receive. Oh, and going back to that idea of malchut, just remember the one psalm that we had read about David. It was referring to Saul, Shaul. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so bohu is translated as desolation, or more precisely, emptiness. This represents the emptiness of a vessel ready to receive. The word bohu can also be read as two words, bohu, literally, in it is it, or it is in it. This is also because it is something that can hold the light in it. Kabbalists also speak of tohu as the intermediate state between potential and realization. In their initial stage, the vessels only had potential existence in the infinite being, and in this state, they could not be comprehended at all. Their state of realization, on the other hand, is that of bohu. Tohu is the intermediate state between these two. For initiates, this also contains a lesson for those who would enter the mystical realm. The husk, the klipot, derived from tohu, or chaos, are the forces that confound people and cause them to have misleading visions. So remember, he was talking about at one point in this book that you couldn't study you couldn't study mysticism without having a failure. Okay, so a complete vessel is a vision that contains a complete. A complete vessel is a vision that contains a complete, understandable idea, whereas a broken vessel is one that is confounding and confusing. The state toward which one must strive is therefore bohu. It is what contains the true vision. It is in it. So there we go. That's a little bit of commentary on the first two Siman of the Bahir. So